Good morning and welcome to our Boosters of Lent. This weekend again, we are. It's beautiful that we already started spring and days have been not so much nice, but it's been great to be able to feel that it's warm and at least we don't have snow there and we are moving in spring, so it's great to be here. So today I want us to reflect and think about um, forgiveness, but more than that is, I think I want us to just pray and think that God waits for us. God is looking for us. God is awaiting our return to Him. God is awaiting our return to Him. And Lent is a season of reconciliation, a season of forgiveness, a season in which we go deeper into our own spiritual life and look at the things that we want to change, the things that we probably have done wrong, and ask for forgiveness. And God is a God who waits for us. Doesn't matter if it's a month, a week, a year, any time that you take, He's waiting for you. He waits patiently. So, and that's the beautiful thing about God. From the moment that we turn away from Him, He's waiting for us. And that's probably one of the most beautiful dimensions of God, and it's probably the one that we have most difficulty with. Because we kind of tend to think about a God who is a judging and a severe, strong God who is almighty and all powerful and are going to bring down all His power on us. And we forget His tender dimension. We forget or tend to forget His mercy and compassion. And God is always waiting to forgive us. And when we are back to Him, He's ready to embrace us again and to lead us again closer to His heart. So for today, we're going to listen to the scripture from the Gospel of Luke in the chapter 15 from verse 11 to 32. And it's a very well-known gospel, the story of the prodigal son. So Eloy, please read for us this gospel passage.
Then he said, "A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me.' So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, 'How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, but here I am, dying from hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I obey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, you swallowed up your property with prostitutes. For him you slaughtered the fattened calf." He said to him, "My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found."
It's a beautiful image of God. God embraces us. And in this parable, Jesus wants us to know, wants us to share with us this understanding of the Father, an understanding of total love and care and compassion for us. uh, we sometimes we may overlook because we know this parable, and because we have heard this passage several times, we may overlook what is at the point of, or the central point of the parable. And if you pay attention closer to the reading, it says that, of course, the son repents and all that, but it says, while he still was still a long way off, the father saw him and went out to meet him. And that's like a really beautiful image. And we probably kind of missed out that because we kind of focus on the son who repents and says, "I'm going to go back to my father," or we focus on the oldest son who is like all furious about why my dad is doing a party for this guy who basically wasted all his money and life. And we missed on that beautiful image that the father is waiting for his son. We may think on the porch of his state, of his home, and just every day probably, I want to believe that every day he sat down there in the evening, in the afternoon, just looking outside, looking at the sun setting, and also like looking to the path, to this way that goes to his home, with the hope that he will show up. And that's because he's doing that, he then catch sight of his son when he's still way out there. And then he goes running to him and embraces him. And then everything changes and transforms at that moment of the father's life and the life of the people at the home. He starts asking people to bring new clothes and to bring food and to give him everything. And he sends to kill the fattened calf that is there, and makes a big party. And as you can see, the father doesn't focus on the wrongdoings of the son. He doesn't focus on all the terrible things that he has done. He focuses on his return. He's back, because my son was dead and he's back to life. And he focused on that, and he's great rejoicing on having the son back. And God is always rejoicing on having us back. And I think some of the sentiments when we go straight or go far away from God, uh, because we have done something that is wrong, uh, we could fall in like two sentiments. And I think one is kind of healthy and the other is unhealthy. The healthy one is to feel a bit of a guilt. You feel guilty. That's what happens to the young person. He feels guilty that he has wasted all his money and everything, and that the workers at his father's farm are having much that what he has, and he feels guilty that has acted in a wrong way to God and to his father, and then decides to come back. And then that's the first sentiment. No, guilt help us to see where we have uh, gone astray, and lead us to seek reconciliation, to seek forgiveness, to seek repairing and restoring our broken relationship. But then there's other sentiment which is not a healthy one, and I think it's what we need to be very careful of, and is shame. We sometimes fall into, when we do wrong things, feel shame. We feel ashamed of our behaviors. We feel ashamed of those things that we committed. And then we started to believe that we are what we have done, right? That we are not a worthy person of the love of God, a worthy person of reconciliation, a worthy person to be around others, because we feel so ashamed. And I think shame erases the true identity that we all have. That is our identity of being loved by God, our identity of being known by God. So let us be very careful about that. We could feel guilty, but let us not be ashamed, because if we fall in that shamefulness, we may lead into believing that we are beyond redemption. And remember, God is waiting for us to reconcile. God is waiting out there, looking out for us, and He's just waiting to see us coming to Him, and He will just rejoice by our coming back to Him. So I just want you to think this week about probably a few things about like experiences of forgiveness. No, have you ever experienced forgiveness from someone, or and how do you feel about that? Like, what was your feeling, your sentiment right there when you felt when you received that forgiveness? And another thing is, have you ever forgiven anyone? And how did you feel about that? Giving forgiveness to others. How much joy did you have when you were able to forgive somebody and you were able to restore that relationship that was broken? So just think about those couple of things, and then maybe through the week for the prayer, I want you to find, of course, more than prayer, find time to reconcile with God. See if there's something that some part of you that have gone astray from God, has gone far from God, and you need to go back to Him. Remember, He's waiting for you. Of course, we have the sacrament of reconciliation. That's one tool that you could use to do it. And we will have a full day of reconciliation on April 5th at the St. Paul Church, St. Paul Parish. So you're invited to go there if you feel uncomfortable to come to me or to Jose Mario. Okay, but yeah, that's a time to reconcile. But also just think about the things that you may need to reconcile with God and with others. And then why don't you just spend like 15 minutes with this passage? 15 minutes every day praying with the Prodigal Son passage. And it's a good parable to for us to pray with, because one day you could be just the prodigal son, and could kind of imagine that, like pray, do this imaginative prayer. What about if you were the prodigal son? And another day you can just take the role of the father, and how would you act or react as like acting like the father? Another day you could be the oldest brother. How do you feel about uh, other people getting forgiveness and you being the whole time committed? Or you could be the servants around the place that when the son comes, or you could be the people in the foreigner lands who see this rich boy spending and doing crazy stuff and like living life without any north. So just use 15 minutes of your day to pray imaginative with this parable of the prodigal son. And remember, we are the Catholic community in Central Racine, one faith, one family.